Hello and welcome to Pivotal People. Today we're going to be speaking to Sam Wright, and Sam is Senior Director at CBRE. Welcome Sam, and thank you very much for joining us at Pivotal People, and we're really interested to know your story. So first of all, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do now, about the role that you're carrying out right now, and a little bit about that?
Sure. So I run the healthcare valuation advisory business at CBRE. We value between about 15 and 20 billion pounds worth of healthcare real estate every year. And we do that for a whole variety of different purposes. So it might be as simple as somebody's looking to buy a care home, they want a loan from the bank, and so we would help provide them with a valuation report. But we also do a lot of other things with that as well. So for example, if you have a portfolio and you were looking to do asset management to enhance the value of what you've got there, so we might help sort of work with the provider, look at what they've got, look at the assets, look at how they can be tweaked and changed to create additional value, and then look at what the return on investment is, and then sort of order how they should do it to make sure they're getting the most bang for their buck. Then the third thing we do is we look at development consultancy as well. So if you want to do a new build, we'd look at advising on the design and looking at the costs and looking whether it's viable and how much people should pay for the sites. And then we also do lease advisory as well. So if you're looking to renegotiate with a landlord, we will help providers think about what levers to pull that help them, but also what the landlord on the other side might be looking for as well.
Go back to the beginning. Okay.
Yep.
How did you get to that point? Start at the beginning and talk us through what got you from being a boy at school to where you are now.
So I grew up in rural Dorset, and I grew up in a pretty ordinary kind of middle class household. My mother was a teacher and my father was in the Royal Navy. Okay. My father was away a lot of the time, as you'd imagine. So my sister and I spent a huge amount of time with our grandparents.
Okay.
Both of my grandparents, they really lived their lives by this almost sort of old-fashioned ethos of public service. And it was all about doing things to support other people and doing things to better the community. And both of them had in fact devoted their entire careers to doing this. My grandfather, who'd been a barrister but had left the law to go and work in social housing and had ended up running a social housing charity. And my grandmother started off as a nurse and then had ended up being the chairman of Great Ormond Street Hospital.
Wow.
So as children, we heard all these stories about all these campaigns that she was running to fund new buildings or pieces of equipment or research to help the children in the hospital and to really, help people from all over the world kind of come and get better quality care. So I think that ethos, that actually it was really important to help other people and work in something that was a little bit more than just money, was something that was really invested in all of us as
Fantastic.
Children.
That's a really lovely story and proves my point entirely, that people that are in your position have got some kind of background that points them in that direction. Yeah. Even if you don't know it, even if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. At that point, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, and I had absolutely no idea that I was going to sort of end up in this position.
So from school, what were you good at school? What did you how did you achieve well at school?
I thought I'm not really sure I wasn't that good at that much, really. I think I was probably a bit of an all-rounder.
Okay.
I mean, I ended up reading history at St Andrews, so I suppose that was really where sort of my interest sort of lay. But on the whole, I generally was fairly good at most things at school and was able to get by. But it was really, I suppose, it was at the end of university when I was trying to work out what I wanted to do, and I had absolutely no clue. So because I had no clue, I thought, well, I better get a profession. Yeah. Because actually, if I've got a profession, then that will hopefully, mean that somebody will employ me, but also it gives me a couple of years to sort of be out in the world and kind of see what I might like to do. And at that point, most of my peers were going to do law or accountancy. And to me, both those, you seem to be sort of shut up in an office all the time and looking at spreadsheets or contracts. And I thought, well, that's perhaps not quite right for me. And so then it was by pure chance that I stumbled across chartered surveying, and it had a bit of accountancy, a bit of law, a bit of finance, a bit of markets, a bit of construction, and I like that. I suppose it goes back to your question about what was I good at. Well, actually, I kind of liked a bit of everything. And so I decided that was what I wanted to do. And so I spoke with a couple of friends to find out a bit more about it, and one of them said that his dad was a chartered surveyor.
Fantastic.
So I said, great, I'll went to go and have coffee with him, and had coffee with him, and after 3 or 4 minutes, he said to me, look, this is great, you're enthusiastic, you're intelligent, you've done your homework, but no one's going to give you a job. And I said, what do you mean no one's going to give me a job? And he said, well, you didn't get to the right school, and your parents aren't anyone in the industry.
Oh, okay.
I was like, okay, this wasn't quite how I expected it to work. And so I said to him, but if this is what I want to do, then how do I get there? And he said, well, what you need to do is you need to go and get a copy of what's called the Estates Gazette Directory, which is essentially like a sort of telephone book of all the chartered surveying firms in the country. And he said, you want to go to the section for the West End of London, which is where all the big firms are and all the big deals are done. And just phone them up and get yourself some work experience.
Okay.
And once you've got some work experience, then people will start to take you a bit more seriously. And so I said, okay. So I went away and I got myself a copy of the Estates Gazette Directory, and I started sort of cold calling all these firms, and so got quite a lot of no's and quite a lot of rejection on the way. But eventually, when I got down to ED, I got to a company called Edward Simmons, and they said that they'd like to have someone come for work experience. So I went there for a 6 weeks work experience, and after 2 weeks, they offered me a job, and I spent the next sort of 4 years there.
2 weeks?
Yeah, after 2 weeks.
2 weeks work experience and you got a job.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. It was great, and that was also a really sort of pivotal moment on my journey into healthcare.
So that first job, you went in as work experience.
Yep.
And was there anybody there that was your sort of that was guiding you or supporting you?
So the work experience was fairly brief, and then when I started working. When I've been doing work experience, I've been working in industrial property.
Yeah.
And then when they gave me the job, they said, well, I'd like you actually to go and work in the healthcare department. And I had absolutely no idea what kind of healthcare was at that point. But that was when I went to go and work for Henry Harris, who is still very much a figure in the industry. And he taught me huge amounts throughout my time working for him. But I think probably the most pivotal sort of periods of working for him were probably the first 2 weeks, actually, because for me that was very much a sort of make or break point. Was this something I wanted to do, or was I going to go and do something else? And first we went to a care home down in Catford, and it was absolutely horrific.
Really?
It was one of the most horrible care homes I think I've ever been to.
Okay.
You walked in and you were just hit by this stench. Sort of back in those days, as I'm sure you remember, you could have 3 to 4 in bedrooms.
That's right,
and people were sort of stacked up high. Yeah. The staff weren't interested. There were no en suites. They couldn't move people around, and in the lounge, people just looked like they were sitting there and waiting for God. And it was a horrible place. And I left there thinking, I'm not sure I can do this. Yeah. This is not, what I want. Anyway, then the following week we went out to another care home, and it was the complete polar opposite. It was, from an asset perspective, it was new, it was purpose built, it was light, it was airy. Everyone had their own bedroom, it had en suites, but more than that, the staff was so engaged and the residents were happy, and I could see the positive impact that it was making on people's lives. Yeah. And it was at that point that I realised that actually, through the job that I'm doing, if I can encourage development, if I can encourage investment, and if I can help make people who are invested in care for the right reasons want to come into the industry, then that will actually help improve the quality of care homes and the quality of care operations, and actually ultimately help improve the lives of the people who are living in those homes. Yeah,
my thoughts entirely. People like yourself have a massive impact on what we do as care home managers, providers. So were your grandparents still around at that time? My
grandfather had passed away, and my grandmother she had dementia.
So your grandmother was aware that you'd gone into healthcare, really?
Yes.
Which would have made her very happy, I'm sure.
Yeah, look, she was very proud because, but I think it wasn't necessarily just about healthcare. For her, it was about that being that social purpose. Of course. That was the big thing for her, and so she was very very proud. So
those 2 care home experiences, what do you think you can do in your role to make sure that it's the second care home you're supporting, or you're helping that second care home rather than that first care home?
I think there are a number of different things. I think the first piece is around design. and making sure that when people are building and they are designing, that actually we're helping them think about the design points that really make a difference and the design points that really enable the staff to use the home. Because if you've got somebody who's just a pure developer building, they don't really understand the operations of a care home, and perhaps they might not actually necessarily really care that much about it. But actually, if you've got a building that can be utilised very effectively, that's much better for the staff and it's much better for the residents. I think the second piece is that as a big sort of international real estate firm that CBRE is, we work with a lot of international investors. We know them as different investment houses and what they do and how they operate. And there are some that have got very long-term aims, and some who kind of really get the idea that to have a good care business, you've actually really got to invest in the care.
Yeah.
And so we spend perhaps a bit more time working with those to help get them comfortable with the sector, so that they will be the ones who will be investing, so that you've got an alignment of interest between the investors and the care operators, who are both focused on actually delivering good care outcomes, because they recognise that not only is it the right thing to do, but it's also a good thing for them as businesses and investors. Yeah,
there are some amazing turnaround projects that we've been involved in at Fulcrum, that we've seen care homes go from inadequate to good. And we've seen that turnaround, and we've seen the difference we make to those residents in doing that. So with the right operator and the right support, that first care home you went into could be very different.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
A little bit more now about care future. Okay. Yep. So we're in a period of change at the moment, I feel. Certainly from my end, I suppose.
Yep.
And I think the care providers are struggling. The care providers are struggling with this squeeze on, particularly on the rise in the minimum wage and the reduction in the percentage of the local authority funding, and how the care home providers are going to manage that going forward, and how that, what used to be a really quite a good thing to get into, certainly 30 years ago when I was doing it, care home providers were very wealthy and they made a lot of money out of it, and now it's getting tighter and tighter. How do you see the future?
First thing is, I don't think care homes are going anywhere. And I think there's that supply-demand sort of balance. We all know the number of people over 85 is going to double in the next 25 years. We know that people are living longer with greater health conditions, and so that care isn't going to go anywhere. And I don't really see society, saying, right, we're suddenly not going to provide longer term care from the public sector funding side, and from the private sector side. Huge proportions of people over 65 own their own houses, and so therefore have got some ability to fund their own level of care. But I don't think it's just saying the number of people over 85 is going to double, therefore the need for care homes is going to double, because I think that technology is going to take up a lot of that. So I think we're going to see people living at home for slightly longer. I think we're going to see a sort of a rise in domiciliary care, and I think we're going to see the rise of technology within care homes as well. But all in all, I think that the demographic demand is going to mean that there is always going to be a need for care, and if there's going to be a need for care, then the funding will have to be such that it makes sense for the care providers to deliver it. Because ultimately, with any kind of business, nobody is going to run a business if it's not financially viable. No, absolutely. Thank you. That's really valuable. Finally, what about you? What's the future for you, and what are your dreams for your future career and your future life? So I think for me, first thing, I'm very focused on building the team at CBRE. We've doubled the revenue in the last 3 years. We've just finished 2024, and we've had another sort of record-breaking year for the team. So I think I'm just focusing on building that for now. But if there was an opportunity to get in, more hands-on and giving some sort of care provision at some stage, I'd love to get involved with doing that. Fantastic. That's really very, very interesting. Thank you very much for coming, and good luck with the future. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.